What really is sin? Uh, Many theologians over the years, Martin Luther, Timothy Keller, others, have talked about all sin is basically idolatry. And C.S. Lewis, others, it's when we take a good thing that God created, because God created everything good. Everything in this world is good. We take a good thing and we make it an ultimate thing, or we misuse something that is good for something that was never supposed to be uh, used in that way. So, for example, here in Exodus 32 through 34, we see God's people quickly reverting to idolatry. We might think it's kind of silly, but what they're doing is they're taking a good thing of power, a good thing of really golden calf represented power and fertility, and taking that good thing and raising it up to be an ultimate thing. They also had a desire to see their God and to make God that they could control and handle and see. And so, very quickly, just like Jesus told his disciples, the spirit might be willing, but the flesh is weak. And already, in a moment's notice, they're fashioning a golden calf, what they learned in Egypt, and they're worshiping that calf because they don't know what happened to Moses. And so Aaron tries to give excuses. The Lord tests Moses by telling Moses, you go down and you talk to your people who you took out of Egypt, almost distancing himself from his people. And Moses passes the test, reminds God that they're his people, that God promised to be with his people, that he would not separate himself from his people, even though their sin. And then we hear about the judgment that came, the consequences for their idolatry and sin. And we hear how Moses would continue to meet with God for these kinds of judgments in chapter 33. And then chapter 34, Moses has this intimate discussion with God about who God is and wanting to see his glory. Well, God couldn't reveal his complete glory to Moses. That would be too much for Moses, like the power of the sun. You can't get too close. It'll burn you. But he does hear a very clear sermon on the name of the Lord. And this sermon in chapter 34 it's repeated over and over again throughout the Old Testament. It's kind of the John 3:16 of the Old Testament, that the Lord, Yahweh, is compassionate and gracious, slow to anger and abounding in love and faithfulness, maintaining love to 1,000 generations of those who love me, forgiving wickedness, rebellion, and sin, but he does not leave the guilty unpunished. He punishes the sins of the third and fourth generation. And here in that description of God's name, we see his love, his compassion. He's slow to anger. He's always willing to forgive. And yet, if you harden your heart to God, if you willfully walk away from him, if you willfully twist his creation and serve created things instead of the creator, if you willfully give yourself over to selfishness and sin, and you give yourself over to that, you do not turn from those ways to repent, God is also a God of justice. And those who have been on the other side of justice or of oppression, those who've been a victim of oppression or wickedness or evil, know that deep down we all desire true justice. And so let's hold God to his name. Let's receive his compassion and grace. Let's rejoice in his justice. Let's honor him above all things. Let's not take his good creation and twist it and distort it to use for our own selfish needs. Let's not twist and distort God's creation, taking good things and making them ultimate things like sex, money, and power. Let's use the good things that God has given us with thankful hearts. Hopefully that helps. Keep reading. Don't give up.